Today we have the wonderful Meg Holiday, also known as Meg Wit. Don't worry, we're going to explain. Hi, Meg. I am so excited to talk to you today.
I'm so excited to talk to you.
We have so much to cover, but before we get into it, can you please tell everyone, what do you do and who do you help right now?
Okay, so I am a business coach for feminist founders, and I help them have their biggest month yet in their service-based business first, and then I help them create their first six-figure year.
Love it. Okay, why don't we start with the name? Because I feel like that's going to be the question on everybody's mind. You have a podcast. Can you please tell everybody what your podcast is? Plug it right here. Tell everybody what it is.
For sure. My podcast is Six Figs, and which is short for six figures, but I love the idea of figs as an abundance kind of metaphor, which is perfect for sales coaching and for women who are growing their businesses. So Six Figs is the name of my company and also my podcast.
And in your podcast, I noticed that you go by Meg Wit. However, when we booked this interview, you went by Meg Holiday. And I feel like this would be a great opportunity, a great platform for you to explain the difference. You know, when you first came on, I'm like, I don't know how to ask about it. Was there a sad story that I shouldn't approach? And you never know how to ask. So this is your chance to come clean about the name.
Okay, so Witt, W-I-T-T, is my maiden name. I am married. I never took my husband's last name, but about a year ago, I decided, I'd been thinking about it for quite a while, but it was about a year ago that I decided to start going by Holiday instead of Witt because it's a name that I chose. And I decided I didn't want to carry a man's last name that I had inherited from either my father or my husband, that I felt really empowered to choose my own last name. And I thought about it quite a bit. What should I choose? But to be honest with you, Holiday was there from the beginning. I'm a big fan of Billie Holiday. I also just love, obviously, the vacation vibes that Holiday evokes. I think it's a very pretty, very classic and also relaxed word. And I wanted it. It felt like mine. As soon as I said Meg Holiday, I thought that's what it is.
Now, I like to start before we get into your business, and there's so many places I want to go to check in your story, but I like to start the way back. Can you tell us where you were born? What was it like growing up being you?
Oh, way back. Okay. So I was, born in the 80s, and I was actually born here in Northeast Ohio, where I live right now. And then the summer before I started high school, which is a pretty tricky time to make a big move like this, my parents moved us back to the Cleveland area in Northeast Ohio. So that was a big transition in my little life. I was 15 years old, a freshman in high school, going to a new school, and then also in a new country.
When you were in high school, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
An English teacher.
Where did the plan go a different way?
Let's see. I entered college as an English major, and I think I claimed English as my major most of the way through, and then switched it to business in my third year.
Wait, what happened?
Well, to be honest with you, I went to school in my early 20s at community college as an English major, and then I dropped out. And then about 10 years later, I went back after my son was born.
I can't believe you were just going to like yada, yada, yada your way out of 10 years of story right there.
I'm trying to, synthesize everything and make it as short as possible. But
okay.
I did sort of yada, yada my way through a decade there. So I dropped out because, like I said, I was never a really happy, good student. So I dropped out. And then I traveled. I spent time in Scotland for a few months. I spent time in Egypt for a couple of months when I was 19, came home, married my high school sweetheart at 19 years old. It was 1 month before I turned 20. that marriage only lasted for a few years. Unfortunately, I left when I was 23. And was kind of single and partying and doing all the things you do in your 20s. And I dropped out of college. And then I got pregnant with my son at 29. And my son's father's family offered to pay for me to go back. He came from a really affluent family, very amazing, supportive family. I love them so much. And his mom, actually, who owned a company, she's retired now. She's that true matriarch. She has, a couple of master's degrees, and she had this very successful multi-million-dollar business that she had built over 2 decades of her career. And she offered to pay for me to go back to school, and I'll be forever indebted and grateful to her for that. So I went back when my son was 6 months old, and my goal was to graduate with my bachelor's before he went to preschool. So that's what I did.
I would love to know, because I want to start talking about 2018, right? When the business actually came into play, right? When the coaching and the Dreamweaver podcast, like when all of these things started to come in. So what can you tell us to help us jump from you got your bachelor's to 2018? If you can tell us like just a bridge, because we're going to start talking business.
Okay, I like this. So this is the bridge. I got my bachelor's. My son went to preschool. He was 3. I was 33, something like that. And just for context, I'm going to be 40 this summer. So that's where we are now in 2022. I'm going to be 40.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm going to Italy for my birthday. I'm very excited.
Yes.
So he went to preschool. I finished my undergrad. I was working for Cleveland Yoga full time, teaching yoga and managing. I left Cleveland Yoga after 4 years of working there. I'd been in the yoga world for 8, but after 4 years of working there to work for Starbucks. And I did that because it felt like one of those secure career moves. I was going to manage a Starbucks store, and I wanted the 401k and the health insurance, and I wanted a salary increase and an opportunity to move up potentially and become a district manager, because I had heard district managers made like $80,000, and that was more money than I had ever considered making. And I thought, well, gosh, if I could become a district manager at Starbucks, I'd really be rolling in the dough,
Yeah, you've made it.
I've made it. Yeah. And then so I left Cleveland Yoga and I got into Starbucks, and lo and behold, I hated it and realized I don't like corporate culture at all. And it's like, I don't like school. Starbucks, managing a Starbucks store is very much for people who are good at school, in my opinion, because it's very structured. There is a way to do everything. They have it down to a science. And if you can nail that and then train people to nail it, you're good. But I think outside the box. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I just didn't know it yet. And so, the creative side of me and the part of me that loves variety and gets bored very quickly was not having Starbucks, nor did I really find it interesting to wake up at 4 a.m. every day to open a store downtown. So I actually left Starbucks for the Cleveland Flea, which is a very important piece of the story, because the Cleveland Flea is now closed, sadly. But for about 8 years, it was this beautiful, mythical organization in Cleveland that was like a business incubator for small businesses. So every month they would meet in a big parking lot, sometimes up to 200 small businesses. And it was like a giant party. And all of these small businesses would make all kinds of money on a random Saturday in Cleveland because they had exposure. And sometimes those parking lots would have up to 10,000 visitors on a Saturday. And I became the director of that organization, became friends with the owner. And the Cleveland Flea was the company I was with when I started my business in 2018. So I think the Cleveland Flea was that mind-blowing exposure to small business owners and realizing, okay, corporate's not for me, but this is for me. Like these women who own cotton candy stands and little clothing boutiques and make their own candles, this I like, So I started my company a few months into working for the Cleveland Flea. I think because I was surrounded by so much entrepreneurship and creativity, I wanted to be a part. I felt like I was missing out. So I wanted to start something. And then I left a few months later after my business started taking off.
What is your quitting your job story?
my quitting my job story, to be honest with you, is that my boss came to me and said, it's either me or your business. And I said, it's my business. And I left.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I wish it was a sexier tale, but that's the story. Yeah.
That is crazy. Where was he coming from? Why was he bringing this up?
Yeah, she was actually, I said to her, am I not doing my job? And she said, no, the opposite, you are. But I think she started to get worried she was going to lose me, to be honest, because I was working very hard and becoming integral at the Flea. And now I had this new business on the side. And I think, the writing was sort of on the wall. So I think maybe a little fear and a little like you're cheating on me with your business kind of feeling. And yeah, the ultimatum was given. And I thought, well, it was that first moment when I was very clear that it wasn't a hard decision. I was going to leave for my business for sure. Yeah.
Now, here is where I want to get into what were the pivots that have happened, because it's been 4 years. You and I actually started our businesses around the same time, back in 2018.
I love that. Yeah.
And for me, my every year is basically been a different evolution of my business, right? One of my clients asked us the other day, who here has changed their ideal client and why did you change it? I'm like, okay, let me count the ways, first of all, like, right? So I'd love to know your list. Like, who have you served in the past 4 years and how has it changed?
Oh my gosh, year one, it was anyone who will give me money to help them in their business in any way. So I was doing inventory. Remember, I have quite a background in retail from managing the boutiques at Cleveland Yoga and Starbucks. And I didn't go into it, but I also worked in high school and early 20s and other retail jobs. So I have quite a long history in retail. So I was helping a lot of brick and mortars with inventory and visual displays and sales training. And I love photography. Photography has been a hobby of mine since my son was born. So I was helping people with brand photography, you name it, building their Squarespace websites, helping them create business plans, anything I had learned from business school, I threw in there. I would make an offer out of anything. It was like, I'm your girl. I'm your unofficial business partner who's going to help you with whatever you don't know how to do in your small business. Never mind that I had just started my own small business. But if I had taught myself how to do it, I would teach you and I would help you how to do it. So that was year one, was just, I'm a small business consultant for, I think I used to say for women-owned businesses. And it wasn't more specific than that. And then in year two, I actually opened an agency aspect of my business where we did business management, Facebook ads, podcast production, everything. So I had an agency season of my business. And then after the agency season of my business, I realized I really wanted to coach on sales, which is around when I changed my business name to Six Figs. I really wanted to coach on sales. And I learned that because in every conversation I had with a small business owner, we would end up talking about money. It just kept happening. Like, okay, we're talking about marketing and customer service and programming and all of this. And then I would go, but are you making money? And they would go, kinda, was usually the answer. Are you paying yourself yet? And they'd go, I'm paying myself a little. And I'd say, have you had a 10K month yet? No, I haven't had a 10K month yet. Okay, now we're going to talk because this is my area that I want to talk. So I slowly over the past 2 years have niched into helping people make more money. And I specifically target feminist founders with service-based businesses. So not as much the brick and mortar and the products any longer.
Okay, there is a story in there that I really want to hear the story about. But first, the next 60 seconds are your toot my own horn moment. I want everyone to know about the success that you've achieved over the past 4 years. So I want you to, this is your moment to tell us what are your proudest accomplishments over the past 4 years and the successes that you've had. Tell us that right now.
Okay, my proudest accomplishment is that 84% of the women who join my programs have their biggest month yet while they're working with us, which is so exciting. And the average growth percentage, meaning how much they grew in their biggest month yet from their second biggest month yet, is over 400%, which is wild. So that's exciting. Also, my mastermind that I hosted last year, it ended the start of this year. I'm doing it again right now. All of the women in the mastermind had their first 6-figure year while working with me, which is insanely exciting. So those are the two things I'm most proud of. And then I would say if I had to add a third thing in there, it is how much my mindset has grown over the past 4 years. I don't feel like I think the same way that I used to think. And I'm proud of that because I've done a lot of work to get there, just through coaching, having my own life coaches and business coaches, and so much self-coaching as well. But I'm very, very dedicated to that. And I'm mostly proud for myself of how much I've grown my thinking since I started the business. So those are my big 3.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because I want everyone to understand what a kick-ass entrepreneur you are and how far you've come, and everything that you've done has been through like blood, sweat, and tears. Like this is sacrifice. This is, we putting yourself out there is not easy. And from everything that you've shared, everything that you've gone through, and all my research just shows that you are just such an amazing woman. And I want everybody to know that right now. So, because the next story that I want you to tell us about is one that I know a lot of people are going to relate to, especially when they're thinking about or they're experimenting with changing their niche. So you just mentioned that there was a period in your business where you went full agency. So this was around the pandemic time, right? Where people, the impression was, okay, people are not going to be paying for a lot of really like high ticket coaching programs. So how can we adjust? Okay, let's just do what we can do for everybody. From the moment that you decided, I need to close down this agency and focus on something else and start focusing on more coaching, you mentioned in your podcast that, there were mistakes made, that there was a lot to learn from, letting go people, fulfilling your obligations to close it down, how it was communicated and shared with the actual clients. And I would love to hear that story so everybody knows exactly what went on and what we can learn from that.
It's so interesting because as you're asking me this, I'm feeling the tears already. And it's not, thankfully, tears because of how challenging that season was. And it was very challenging. If I, have to point to probably top 2 most challenging seasons in my business, that was it, when I decided to close the agency. But the tears, I think, are just coming from how proud I am of myself and of my company, honestly, for getting through that season and being reborn in a way when I thought maybe I had really screwed it all up. I thought maybe if I close the agency, I won't have a business anymore. And I really had to sit with that. I had to lay awake at night with the possibility. I have all these clients who are paying me monthly for these services that I don't want to offer anymore. I have to let all of these people, all these contractors go because I don't want to pay them anymore. This is getting out of hand. And then I'm going to lose all these clients. So then what if I make $0 next month? And I can't afford to make $0. Most people can't. And it was very scary. I think you probably listened to this. I think I paid $40,000 or $50,000, something like that. I had to pay off, and I didn't put it on a credit card or take out a business loan. So I actually asked everyone to be patient with me while I paid every invoice and did every client refund I needed to do and paid every invoice I needed to pay for my contractors. It was about between $40,000 and $50,000. And I did it in 6 weeks in cash. And what was hard is that, of course, I didn't have any money because every dollar that came into the company had to go back out. So it was a very draining season. But I also was able to walk away with it being clean and complete and learning the lessons I needed to learn. I think the biggest lesson is that when you make decisions in your business that aren't rooted in desire, actual deep desire, your own, not your clients, not, society's desire or what your niche is telling you it needs, but just from your own, what do I want to do with my time? How do I want to show up to serve? It's a slippery slope because then you'll start making decisions based on the money you can make, what your clients are asking for, what the climate is in the world. At the time, it felt like a wise decision because COVID had just happened, and I quickly fell into a fear-based belief that people wouldn't pay for coaching. And I started the agency based on that. And I think it was a hard lesson, but it was needed for me, because I think I would have probably continued to make decisions based on what's working, what's not, what are people asking for, what will make us money, if I didn't have the experience of the agency. And I do not make decisions like that anymore. I really don't.
Tell us more about that old way of making decisions and what everybody should walk away from this podcast knowing how to make decisions from now on.
Yeah. So I teach in my programs that the only filter you should be using to make decisions in your life and in your business is, what do I desire here? That's it. And I can tell you that for women in particular, that's a really hard one. That's a really hard one for women, and for those who identify as women. That is a hard decision to go, am I going to ignore people pleasing, what my partner wants, what my kid wants, what my boss wants, what my clients want, and really go all in on what I want? I don't know. That sounds risky. That sounds a little terrifying. We're not used to prioritizing our desires first and foremost. And I teach this over and over and over in my programs. What is your desire? Sometimes I ask women, what is your desire? And they don't know. It's very common, actually, to not be able to respond to that question with certainty. So then we have to figure out, how do we know what we desire? How does a person know what they want if they've gone their whole life doing things that other people want? They get very confused. What are my desires? What are their desires? So a good place to start is, if there was no consequence, if there was no negative consequence to my decision, what would I choose?
That's just hard to answer. That is such a hard question. Because, one thing that I am curious about, because I would love to hear this, is when you made that decision, I would love to know, because this is our first concern. So I know everybody listening wants to know, what were the worst reactions that you encountered from clients when you decided to close down?
That's such a good question. You ask the best questions. Oh man, I could talk to you all day. You ask the best questions. Okay, so the worst reaction I got probably wasn't even the worst reaction if we were to objectively look at it, but the one that stuck with me the most as painful was, I called one of my elite clients. We called them elite clients if they were spending, I think, $4,000 a month on retainer with us. And I called her to let her know that I was closing down the agency. And then I said to her, what this means is that either A, we can continue through the end of your contract and I will be taking over, or B, you can work with your contractor directly moving forward. Like, I can set you up and you can work with them directly, or C, I can refund you for your remaining time. And her response was, I just can't talk to you about this right now. This is right before my launch, and and she, I guess, like, her emotional overwhelm at that moment sort of just came crashing down on me. And it felt like a very abrupt conversation, and you could tell she was very upset. And I respected her a lot. She was one of my favorite clients, and I looked up to her and respected her a lot. And I think for me, even though she didn't respond terribly, it's not like she cussed me out or, left me a terrible review online or anything like that. It could have been so much worse, but it stuck with me just how it feels to disappoint someone you care about, how it feels to not be able to give someone what they want. And for them to say to you, you're not giving me what I want, and I'm disappointed. I had to sit with that feeling, and it's an uncomfortable feeling. It's an uncomfortable feeling to know that a decision you made is affecting someone else emotionally in that way. And I had to do a lot of coaching around her emotions, and her response is her responsibility. not mine. My responsibility is to show up with integrity, deliver what I said I would, or a refund, or this, give all the options to be in integrity for as a service provider and to have an open conversation with her. That's my responsibility. Her responsibility is how she responds to that. And it was hard for me through all of that to not internalize everybody's disappointment.
I think that's probably the biggest fear that we all have when, if we were to ask ourselves that question, what would I do if there were no negative consequences? And the fear is, but wait, but there could be. And I could have someone react that way. So what is our next step? So we've decided, okay, I am going to make this really hard decision in my business. By the way, everybody who's listening, you know what that hard decision is, because you already know what is the decision you'll be shying away from. So think about that and how hard that's going to be, and decide right now, okay, I'm going to do it. The next thing is, okay, I'm dead scared of what the reaction is going to be. Let's say, yes, the reaction is going to come. What would be your next tip, Meg, for how to move past it so that we can continue to make decisions based on our desire?
Yeah. So the next step is to ask yourself, how would I want to be approached in this way? If it's something where you're dealing with another human, right? So if that's not the case, if it's just you taking this step to, I don't know, maybe, well, I guess it would apply here too. If you were to leave your day job and work for yourself full time and you think there's going to be some disappointment from your boss, it's that, how would I want this information to be presented to me? So that classic golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, but really take time to process the nuance of it. Would I want it to be in person? Would I want a phone call? Would I want this to be an email or a phone call? Right? Would I want this to be, I'm giving you this information, now I'm running like hot potato? Or would I want it to be a conversation over coffee where I explain and I give them an option of how this process could look together, give them multiple options? How do I want this other person to feel is really the question. And you can't control how they feel. They're going to choose. You have to accept they're going to choose how they feel. Even if you nailed the conversation and did everything perfect, you still don't get to choose how that person responds. That's hard, but that's maturity, right? That's emotional maturity and leadership, is letting other people have their own feelings. So what you do is you show up on your end. How would I want someone to show up for me? And then that's how you show up for them. And then you give them space and permission to feel and however they're going to feel. And then here's step 3. And this is probably the hardest step. You have to have your own back. Once you do it, you have to not go, oh, see, I knew I shouldn't have done it that way. And now this person's upset. And oh my God, what did I do? And maybe I should backtrack and change my mind. And maybe I'll stay and work part-time. Or maybe I'll keep doing this thing with them, even though that's not really my niche anymore. And I don't want to do it anymore. No, now is when you have your own back. And this is the hardest part.
I know everybody felt it just as much as I did. We all have that decision that we need to make. Thank you so much for giving us the tools to handle it and take it from there. By the way, if anybody actually takes action on this decision, come and contact us, and I will leave Meg's information in the show notes, so you can go and tell her how much this impacted you and how it changed your life. Okay, we would love to hear that. So Meg, this has been wonderful. I just have a couple more questions for you.
Okay.
What do you think is the biggest misconception that people have of you as a successful businesswoman?
That it was easier for me. I think I get sometimes that, oh, well, but you had a business degree, or you had experience in management, or you worked at the Cleveland Fleet. Well, I worked at the Fleet for 7 months, and my business degree was really more about corporate world business strategy. I didn't learn anything about entrepreneurship, but a little bit of a sense of it worked for me, or it's working for me, and I seem to love it, and it's doing well. And in year 1, we went from 67K, something like that, to our first 6-figure year in year 2. We did over 300K in year 3. And then last year we did over 500. So last year was our first $500,000 year, and we're projecting probably 750 this year. And I feel like there's sometimes a thought, it's easier for Meg. And I've actually had people say that to me. So I think that's a common one, is if you see someone who has something you desire, to excuse that they have it because there's something they have access to that you don't have access to, if that makes sense.
So if everybody had to do what you're about to tell them to do, and they have no choice, they have to do it in the next 24 hours, what would that thing be?
They would go to their nearest local bookstore and they would buy a copy of Loving What Is by Byron Katie. And they would read it and they would start to implement the 4 questions in their life and dig into their mindset work. And they would do that work for the next 24 hours and every day for the rest of their life. And that's what I would tell them to do.
I will put the link in the show notes. Meg, you are amazing. Really, thank you so much for being so generous and sharing all these stories with us. Can you please tell everybody what you have going on? How can people find you? Where do we follow you?
100%. So you can find me at Six Figs Coaching on Instagram as well as online. That's my web address as well. My podcast is Six Figs, 2 separate words, spelled out 6, S-I-X, Figs. And we have new episodes every Wednesday morning. So I would love to have you over in that space as well. And we run 2 programs, The Room and the Table Mastermind. And The Room is for all new business owners who want to have their biggest month yet and really learn how to make more money doing what they love. And The Room is offered twice a year. It's a 5-month kind of mini mastermind, and it's for service-based business owners. And then the Table Mastermind is for graduates of that program who reach certain metrics and want to create a multiple six-figure years. So those are the 2 programs that we offer.
Thank you so much. We're going to put that in the show notes so everybody can go and follow it. Meg, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.